The Saints got new jerseys, which sparks a Pelicans rebrand debate. Here's why a fresh look could be the team's smartest move this offseason. It's the Wednesday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans at NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all on this Wednesday, and we're getting sartorial here on the Locked On Pelicans podcast. I'm going to tell you why a little mini rebrand would be the smartest thing the Pelicans can do. We'll get into some arena talk a little bit in this as well. We got a lot to cover in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans when we're talking jerseys, colors, logos, all of that good stuff here. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. There we go. Monday through Friday. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. And don't forget, you can watch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network every single weekday at 10:30 a.m., the same place that you watch your Pelicans play. So I'm going to make a pretty bold statement here. The best thing the Pelicans can do this offseason has nothing to do with the players or on-court stuff. It has to do with a little bit of a mini rebrand here. And I mean rebranding to the skeleton logo that we've seen on the City Edition jerseys for the past 2 years. The Pelicans haven't really updated their look, since they rebranded to the Pelicans. There have been some tweaks here and there, and we'll go into those in a minute, but it's time for just a bigger refresh. And this team definitely, after hiring Joe Dumars, needs a jolt of fresh energy. That's why this team decided to move on from David Griffin and go in a completely different direction. They want some changes to be made to this organization, and one of the big changes is perception. And I've talked about that this week here on Locked On Pelicans. I'll continue talking about that. They need to change their perception, whether that's the medical staff, player performance and care staff in the wake of the Derek Queen injury or what have you. Another way to just kind of freshen things up, make people feel good about the team, change the perception from negative to positive, is new jerseys and a rebrand and a refresh. And the Pelicans definitely need to do that. Basically every team has 4 jerseys. You have your icon, association, and statement jerseys, and then you have your City Edition jerseys. For the Pelicans, their blue one is the icon jersey. The association is the white jersey. The statement edition is the red jersey. And then you have the City Edition jersey, which has been the skeleton, black, purple, neon green look the past couple of years. In the past, it's been the Mardi Gras stuff, Mardi Gras nights, the regular Mardi Gras colors. They've done a few different things here. And if you make the playoffs, you sometimes get an earned jersey as well. So the Pelicans have only really changed. So if the City Edition jersey changes every year, hold off on that one for a minute. We'll touch on that here in a second. I'm not worried about that. But I think if you just do a full rebrand to the skeleton logo, getting rid of, it's just a slight tweak to the logo that they have now, fully embrace the skeleton logo and kind of just go with a little bit more meaner of an attitude, right? The skeleton logo is just meaner. It's a slightly edgier logo than what the Pelicans have. With Joe Dumars running the shots here, calling shots, running the team, and he's kind of a bad boy Piston. That seems to fit the mentality, the attitude that he wants to bring, just more bones all around or something along those lines. So if you do that, you make your colors that purple, that neon green, like a little bit of gold, black, white. I think that's been a pretty good look. There's some blue in there as well. And really, they've all been kind of embraced. Everyone liked the black jerseys that they did 2 years ago. I loved the purple one with literal herringbone pattern on the front of it. I bought a Herb Jones jersey, wore it around all during Mardi Gras. I love all of that. And the Pelicans need to do this. Most teams kind of tweak their jerseys every 4 to 5, 6 years or so. The Pelicans really haven't. The only thing that's been tweaked outside of the City Edition jersey that's changed constantly is the red jersey got a tweak in 2023, the Statement Edition, where they put the Crescent City on it versus NOLA, which the red was their best jersey, and they kind of made it worse, in my opinion. So the blue and white jerseys haven't changed since 2017, which is when Nike took over as the jersey manufacturer for the NBA. So it's time to do, so basically they haven't really tweaked much, changed much since 2017 outside that red jersey. And we're not counting the City Editions, since those change every year. So this is what I think the team needs to do. Let me know if you agree or disagree or have different ideas in the comments down below. For your blue icon jersey, just make it like the purple City Edition jersey from this last year, or tweak it where, it's not exactly that and something different. Make it purple, blue, purple, boom, done. It's easy with the skeleton logo and the highlight accent colors of the neon green and everything else. For your white, do a white jersey, the association jersey, and just use the purple, the neon green, and all of that. You could almost keep it exactly the same as it is now, just with different colors, I think would probably be the smart move. For your icon jersey, so this is kind of that, the red jersey, do black. Like an all black jersey with a lot of neon on there is very unique and different from a lot of what other teams are doing. And it looks kind of edgy. It's supposed to have some like visual impact, some punch, some pop on there. That seems to work, in my opinion. Everyone kind of digs an all black jersey scheme when that's not something that you normally do. It just feels a little bit meaner. And then what this allows you to do with the City Edition jersey is you can rotate between more unique and different designs. If you want kind of, to evoke the wrought iron fences of the French Quarter and parts of New Orleans, you can do that in a City Edition jersey that is just completely different from things that you're doing elsewhere. If you want to do a street sign inspired jersey or a streetcar inspired jersey, you still have room to do a Mardi Gras jersey, even if I think the skeleton colors are kind of Mardi Gras flavored. You can wear those around Mardi Gras and you're going to look, fit right on in versus if you were to wear a white or a blue or a red per se, let's, saying, even though that's all fine too. It's Mardi Gras, wear what you want. But you could also do something like a Jazz Fest inspired jersey, like the Jazz Fest shirts that year or something along those lines. And I think that could be fun. You could do more music flavored things. New Orleans is such a big place. And this is why I always take issue when, and look, I'm not from here, so I'm not the one who should only be speaking on this, right? When people are like, oh, we want to like evoke the city with our play, like that doesn't mean anything because there's so many different parts of it, right? And there's certain things people associate more with New Orleans than others, but like every city has so many different aspects to it in its culture, and culture is not a mixing pot, right? That's not a culture. To kind of play like the city is really tough because you're limiting it to that one thing. But this now allows you to kind of represent the entirety of the city, right? Is there a New Orleans East inspired jersey that you could do? Is there a West Bank inspired jersey that you could do that then becomes the City Edition jersey doing different parts of the city? And I love that kind of idea. So you've now refreshed your main jerseys that you're wearing, and now you're really doing something that ties into the city of New Orleans differently every single year, kind of covering all of your bases with everything. And so I love this idea. Look, I just really dig the skeleton logo with everything. I think it looks very, very good. That's what I want to see the Pelicans kind of lean in more. Honestly, I like the purple. I like the neon green. I like the colors with it. I thought the merch this year with more purple forward things looked really, really good. But then you can also make a ton of things in black, and people are going to love that. Will that look great on TV? Maybe not. That's something they need to consider. But it allows you to have some fun with the courts as well, I think. And just give the team a fresh coat of paint goes a long way towards making people view things differently. Like curb appeal matters. And that, I think, is something that the Pelicans really need to look at. And I know they've explored some things. And this is also, actually, I'll share that. Let me tell you something coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. It's not all on the Pelicans, and I'll tell you why. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, so whether you're all about baseball under the lights or golf on the green, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Whether it's baseball, betting on Shohei Ohtani to hit home runs, or Scotty Scheffler just to win basically every golf tournament that he's in. Looked like he was going to run away with the Open, right? May as well throw some money on Scotty Scheffler and just get some green in your pocket while you're watching him put on the green. I don't know if I landed that one here. So FanDuel is the best way to do it with fast and easy payouts. They make even regular season games feel like must-watch events. So if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. New customers can bet just $5 and you're going to get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started and get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And don't forget, you can watch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network every single weekday at 10:30 a.m. For your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast. There's no off season. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we just went over what I think the Pelicans should do. They need to do something, it feels like. They just need to do something to inject some fresh energy into the fan base and people around the league, I think. You know, it's about perception, and perception really matters. We'll talk more about that here, in a minute. And I think it's important just to kind of create a more cohesive, identity, and an identity that just jumps out at you. When you look at the current jersey crop for New Orleans, there's nothing that jumps out at you, I think. They're all, look, to me, relatively safe, which is not a bad thing. But if you want to do something like that's the Pelicans, the colors of navy, red, gold, white, that's used all around the league, right? And all other teams. Do something that just stands out a little bit more, that's different, that's bold. That's a lot of what the city of New Orleans is. And I think that would be, an important thing for this team. It's not like they're, the Lakers where it's you're going to be purple and yellow, purple and gold, right? That is their identity. That's tied into what they are for how long they've been around. Functionally, this franchise existed since 2012, 2013, right? When they rebranded to the Pelicans. So you don't need to worry about going against tradition or things like that. And so really mixing it up, I feel, would be a great thing for New Orleans to do, especially with the skeleton. This is anecdotally. I don't have data. I'm sure the team has tons of data and surveys and stuff. The skeleton seems to be pretty popular and something that everyone really likes, even if they keep losing in the city edition jerseys when they play in them. That's more of a product of a not great team or injured team than those jerseys being cursed or anything like that. And look, this is not just on the Pelicans. This is on their partner Nike and others around the league too. I've actually seen a lot of concept art and jersey mock-ups that, the Pelicans and Nike were considering. And from what I've been told about those, I can't share them, but they're cool. One's an alligator themed one, kind of more of a really kind of leaning in on a swamp monster vibe is, I believe, what the internal document said. That was something that I thought was really cool. The shorts were incredible. There's a couple things in those jerseys that were incredible that I would buy personally, in a moment, I think. Might be a little too gimmicky, right? And I believe that's kind of what Nike said. Nike didn't want to make those, didn't think that it would have kind of a broad appeal. So, kind of going with some of the safer choices or lack of changes here is not the Pelicans being complacent or lazy. It's also other partners who have, say and influence in these type of decisions as well. So there's something to kind of keep in mind with all of that. And as I said before, right, I do think it's really tough to capture any city properly, but particularly the city of New Orleans. But I do think it's more important to kind of create a more cohesive identity and one that just jumps out at you rather than okay, the colors are similar, right? And look, when it comes to doing all of this, I think Joe Dumars is very well suited to this. The team obviously hires consultants. They hire local firms to help with some of the PR, marketing, that kind of stuff, generating ideas and everything. I believe Won't Bow Down came from one of the local PR firms in the city of New Orleans, as they kind of talk through ideas, and you bring in specialists that do all of that, right? But, Joe Dumars is from the Aries, from the region. And I think, if you're picking someone to kind of set the tone, him being, I don't want to say he's like an insider, but less of an outsider than others, right? I think is great. He's openly talked about why he took this job, because he feels he's representing his people, the people that he comes from. And I think that is pretty powerful. In that interview with Anscape, I forget if it was him or if it was just laid out in there that the Kings were trying to hire him to run their team. So was another franchise as well. And he decided to come here because of the connection he has. And I think that can be very important. There's no one who probably wants to see this franchise succeed more than Joe Dumars himself, because of how personal he feels about it. And I do think that's an important thing here. This is someone who, even if he makes mistakes, is coming at it from, a really idealized place probably in his mind. And the team, again, needs to change the perception around everything. I think that is so important. And that's why you brought Joe Dumars in to kind of overhaul everything, right? It shouldn't just stop with the roster out there on the court. The roster is going to be what it is, and you're limited there. When it comes to jerseys, marketing, and all of that stuff, there really isn't a limit necessarily on what you can do or directions that you can go in. It's not like you need to trade your jerseys for jerseys that are equal in a sense in terms of salary and things like that, like trades with players. I did not land that analogy either. I'm struggling today, apparently. But, to be able to just kind of go big with all of this, I think would be smart for the team to try and do. They just need a refresh in some capacity. And again, most teams change their logos, not logos, or tweak things, every 4 to 5 years or so. And the Pelicans jerseys have more or less remained static since 2017. They've actually tweaked their main logo, putting more of a word mark underneath it, a year or two ago. That's not the type of big change. And probably most people even didn't realize the official logo and things like that in their media guide is different than what it was before. And look, you don't need to know about that stuff. That stuff doesn't really matter to you. It's what color is the logo? What merch is the logo on? Do you like the way that stuff looks? Is it plain? Does it speak to you in some capacity? And I think doing some sort of a refresh, right, would be good. Look, the other thing with this is, and this is maybe saying the quiet part out loud, you're going to buy new stuff, right? If they put out new jerseys, you're going to buy new jerseys because you want one that's being currently worn by the team. That is just a fact. You will sell more jerseys. That's more money into the team. Does that help you pay the luxury tax? Does it help pay for some of the things this team needs to try and do? Maybe this is a way to generate new revenue streams for the team and juice that up a little bit, even if it's for a short period of time. And then that benefits the team in a sense. That's then kind of the fans subsidizing paying the luxury tax or whatever it might be, trading for a guy, whatever. I don't know if we love thinking about it in terms of that when the team could just spend the money to do all of that. But besides the point here. So I think this would be in their best interest to do it and just give this team a little bit of a feeling of pop in a good way, in a way that, they're not currently experiencing when, with where they are right now. They just need to do something that generates a bunch of excitement around the franchise that is going to potentially be hit or miss out there on the court next season. But if you got good threads, you're looking good, look good, feel good, play better, might be a great thing for the team as well. So I definitely think it's something that's in their best interest to do. And I like the purple. I like that whole stuff. That'd be fun to kind of try and do. I loved, the courts and the way the Smoothie King Center looked with the lights dimmed and some of the neon out there and everything. I think it's a smart idea, and I think it's something that the team could potentially easily put into play here. There's a process for this. It takes years to change your jerseys. You've got to go through iterations and things like that. It's going to take a while. Could not tell you if the team's actively doing that or not, but I think this is something that they should be looking at doing. So coming up next, let's talk a little bit about the arena, changing the perception around the team some more as well. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. Give me your dream scenario for jerseys, logo, all of that stuff. They're not getting the Jazz back. Let's stick with the Pelicans. Is it the skeleton logo? Is there another logo you like? Do you have a jersey idea in mind? Do you like the idea of the city edition kind of speaking to a different part of New Orleans every single year till you kind of get like run the whole range of them all? You know, I think it's almost like you're like collecting all the editions, parts of the city. I think that's a great idea. Let me know what you think in the comments down below on YouTube. For your second listen, new Saints jerseys. Gold out there. We don't want the Pelicans to be left out. What's Ross Jackson think about them? The black helmet, the gold jerseys, the black pants. Still formulating my opinion. I do like that helmet, though, with the little mini fleur-de-lis on it. I think looks really cool. Ross Jackson's covering everything black and gold, literally, over at the Locked On Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make him your second listen today. So, you know, one of the reasons to change the jerseys is to change the perception around the team, right? And when I spoke about the Derek Queen injury on Monday's episode, the Everydayers kind of know, I said you've got to really work to change the perception around this franchise because, look, the perception of the franchise from external people is not great, right? We've heard some of the reporting out there of, you know, team executives around the league couldn't wait to make a trade with the Pelicans to embarrass them and things like that. And then there's been some refuting of some of the reporting that was like, it might have been, some of that stuff's been a little bit overblown. But look, the Pelicans don't have a sterling reputation around the league at all, right? Like that's safe to say. They're considered cheap. They're one of two franchises that have never paid the luxury tax. They're considered cheap, right? Like it's as simple as that. You know, you pay it once, that maybe changes it. And look, you don't want to be viewed as a cheap franchise. Look at the Indiana Pacers right now and how they went from title contender to not just based on the injury to Tyrese Halliburton, but because they got cheap with Miles Turner and let him just go, getting nothing in return, to the Milwaukee Bucks, like a rival of their team right now. Fans should be furious with Indiana Pacers ownership currently. So you've got to do things that change the perception. You know, it maybe starts with making changes on the player performance and care team and medical staff. And again, I don't know if they're not really at fault for the Derek Queen injury or some of the injuries that we've seen, but you've got to just do something to change the perception. You know, spending money on a rebrand refresh, that shows you're willing to spend money. That can change the perception of player agents, of free agents, right? Of incoming draft prospects, not that they have much of a choice in anything, but that stuff definitely matters, I think. And, you know, Joe Dumars coming in and comprehensively changing this organization top to bottom is probably what this franchise needs in the first place. If it's just going to be the players on the court, look, you could have done that with David Griffin and not gone through this whole thing. You don't bring Joe Dumars in just to make a couple little tweaks on the court. You do this to really kind of change things big time. And when Joe Dumars talks about the region, the city, you can see it again, as I said in the last segment, it really is a personal thing to him, and he's really focused on doing all of that. And I like that approach from him, I think. You know, that might be the coaching staff eventually. It might be other people internally. They need to just massively change things, including the arena. The arena is old. Now, I enjoy going to games there and watching it, and, you know, fancy, whirly things, lights, all that doesn't really matter to me because I want to watch basketball on the court. But I'm not just the target audience. It's everybody, right? This is a big convention city as well. And could you get more people going to games and thus more revenue if you had a brand new arena that people visiting from out of town were like, oh, I want to go check that place out. When Tulane made the Cotton Bowl, beat USC, Roll Wave, one of the reasons I wanted to go to that game so bad, of a variety of them, right, was I'd never seen Cowboy Stadium, AT&T Stadium. I wanted to see it. It's older now, but I really wanted to see it. When the Saints played the Rams at SoFi Stadium, like December 2023, something like that, I really wanted to go to a game in SoFi to just experience it, and that was part of the draw, despite it being really expensive to go. I could have skipped it and been just fine watching it on TV, but I wanted to just see that place, and I was willing to fork out money to do so. A new arena would get a lot of people with that mindset, that mentality, going to Pelicans games. Maybe you're just, you live in New Orleans, you don't really go, but they get a new arena and you want to see it. So like, let's do it tonight, right? You don't really care about the team, but you go, they win. Does that then attract a new fan? Does it just create some excitement around the franchise? And I think the answer to that would be yes. And it's also just what NBA players expect. You spend the majority of your time in two places, right? The practice facility, training facility, and your home arena. Those need to be as nice as possible, right? It's like recruiting in college. Good locker rooms get you really far with recruits for college football and other sports. A good arena, good facilities are what's going to attract players to you because that's where they're spending the majority of their time. They do shoot-arounds at the arena. If the arena sucks, I'm not saying it does. It's fine for a shoot-around. Does that make them like excited to play? Those kind of things. That stuff I can tell you does matter to the players. So you need to look into doing it. Also, your lease agreement is up, and I wonder what the NBA is going to think about, them re-upping the lease for an extended period of time. And look, the lease is one of the most important things here. When people talk about a new arena, and I've seen it all, right? I've talked about it a ton on the show. To me, it's less about a fancy new arena that generates money or is modern. To me, the NBA is not going to want the Pelicans to sign a 30-year lease in the Smoothie King Center when parts of it, per reporting, is like almost condemned in a sense in like not suitable, not working. You can't do that. So you need a new arena that's just up to current standards if you want to sign a long-term lease. And a long-term lease is what keeps the team here. That's the most important thing. So a new arena is the key to a long-term lease for the Pelicans and keeping the team here in New Orleans. And that to me is the biggest part of the story that just does not get talked about enough. People with the franchise have said, we want to keep it here. We're planning to keep it here, whenever Gail Benson passes, and they've got a plan in place for all of that. But you need a lease more than anything. And that's going to take a new or a completely renovated Smoothie King Center to be able to do it. I think we'll hear some more on that in the future. What timeline I couldn't tell you, but that's going to be the most important thing about securing the Pelicans' future in the city of New Orleans. Let me know what you think in the comments down below about the jerseys, the arena, everything we've talked about in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Back to more on-court stuff tomorrow. I want to look at Saddiq Bey a little bit, a couple of other players as well. We got a lot to cover. We're not dropping down to 3 days a week. We're going to be here every single day at the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. See y'all next time.